Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's event. We're so excited to have you here. For those of you who have been with us for the last couple of days, what an honor. This has been so fun, really digging into this foundational diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. For those of you just joining today, super excited to have you. For those of you watching later, also excited. So this is great. Okay, beautiful. So today we are going to dig into cross-cultural communication. So let me get this all set up for y'all and introduce my co-host, Catherine Castro. Hey, Catherine.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Or nice to meet you if you're starting from the end. As Nikki's setting, go ahead.
Go for it.
As Nikki's setting us up, I'd like to express some gratitude to the attendees that have joined us from the very beginning. Time is super precious, and this work is very important to all of us. And that just tells me that this work is important to you. So thank you so much. We can't do this alone. And then today's session is particularly special to me, but I will wait until we actually start. But thank you for being here.
Awesome. Catherine, are you presenting slides today or do you want me to?
You, please.
All right. Beautiful. And then for those of you who captions are helpful to, I'm adding the link on YouTube and I'm dropping it into LinkedIn as well. And then on Zoom, y'all should have access. Drop in any chats if you're able, if there's any other accommodations that would make today's presentation interaction more accommodating. Okay, one sec. Beautiful. Awesome. Well, welcome back again. As we mentioned, let's dig in. So before we get started today, where we're going to talk more about cross-cultural communication, we've gotten some interest in saying, how can we talk to hustle hunters more? What does this look like? These sessions are awesome. How can we get more of this? So to kick things off, I wanted to remind y'all that we're here. We love engaging in these conversations, whether they be broad, foundational, whether it be, sped up a little bit across an organization. We're doing some work as part of a cohort that starts October 6th. Doing an audit of teams, doing one-on-one coaching with managers, building out a hiring process, kind of anything in terms of your people, right? Bringing in new people, thinking of what does culture look like internally, looking at retention, growing people leaders. That's our sweet spot. And we want to help you apply that diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging lens across your business because we know that there's the passion and the care. And what I've learned in building my own business as the CEO and founder of Hustle Hunters is that I was not equipped to do this myself. I needed to have someone that had that licensure, that had that experience professionally in the DEIB space. Cue Catherine. So hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and jump on this train early. And another event that we've got coming up, we've instituted a focused work week at Hustle Hunters, similar to a 4-day work week. And our amazing intrepid operations manager, Ariel, is going to bear all next Monday. So join us if you've ever been curious about what a focused work week or a 4-day work week could look like. Is it feasible? Instead of doing all the research, just join us. She'll synthesize it for y'all. And then as I mentioned, this cohort, we've got 5 sessions over 10 weeks, digging in directly with myself, Catherine, as well as some awesome other folks who are in small, dynamic, nimble organizations who are really looking to be change makers while also accomplishing everything else that's on their list of things to do. So we're going to help you build your muscle in the DEIB world, understand what that lens looks like, and start readily applying it to things that you probably are doing today. So we'd love to join with y'all. Go to hustlehunters.com for more information there. And without further ado, let's dig into some cross-cultural communication today. Catherine?
Oh, thank you, Nikki, so much. I have been thinking about this presentation, this part, actually, this specific part. And I have to tell you all something. It's not the whole thing. So this presentation, this lesson, was taught to me for a span of 4.5 years in intense learning in a master's program. I'm not saying you have to go take that program, San Francisco State's Counseling Department. But if you choose to, that's where I went. And it was a foundation in social justice. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because I want to give you all some grace that this is going to be an hour. And that 4.5 lesson I'm telling you about, I was able to squeeze it in to 2 hours. And then today I was so excited to figure out like, ooh, how am I going to squeeze again into 1 hour? So thank you for joining me. And let's get started. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I might make a little paper, Michael Scott, ask like master's degree for myself after today's session. Get it up on the wall.
Ooh, a certificate. That could be nice. All right. So today's agenda is in 3 parts. Now, if you're starting here today, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do cross-cultural communication. Yes, you can. And the beginning of cross-cultural communication actually starts with no talking. It starts with listening. Then we'll get into some tactics. How can I listen better? Then we'll close. You see that little gap right there on my screen? And if you're listening, going for a walk or working out, there's a gap. That's very intentional. The only way I was able to squeeze it into an hour is I got to take some stuff out. I promise it wasn't like a cliffhanger. It was just, I got to take some stuff out. So if you want to have the full experience, please join us in our cohort. And I'm honestly expressing that so we don't create more harm than good. Next slide, please. Yo, I have Nikki do my slides today because I need some support. It's nice to just teach sometimes. Next slide. All right, so our goal for today is to teach listening as a tool in holding space for employees in the workplace and to understand pain points. One tool. This is one of many tools when facilitating a group. So for example, how I'm presenting myself today, this is all very intentional. I'm aware that colors attract people's eyes. I'm aware that if I look presentable, that maybe you'll pay attention to me more. So there's such a huge science behind how to present well. This is just one tool. Next slide, please. Here are the 3 parts. So listening to yourself, what's going on in your internal, listening to one person, and then listening to people. Notice how I didn't say we're going to start listening to people first. We have to start with you, the individual. Next slide, please. So why do we have to listen to ourselves? Well, before I go into the meat of the lesson here, this actually is very, very personal to me. And the reason is this. Both my abuelas, one passed, the next life, and one still with us, they both speak wonderful Spanish. I mean, with the slang, I mean, you have to speak very fluently to understand what they're saying to you. Myself, not so much. I have some Spanish intact. It's kind of broken. Even when it's super proper, they still don't understand me completely. And so the best way we've communicated is being able to listen to each other without even speaking. And part of it, listening to my own intuition. What's going on here? Let me pay attention. What is being communicated to me? And so that is the way I'm able to stay really, really close to my abuela. So if I can do this with my abuela and not even speaking that much, then you can do this. Listening requires
I just want to jump in and make some connections here. Yesterday in our session 2, we talked a lot about centering one experience. So here we're going to talk a lot about cross-cultural communication, where we expect that there might be some disconnect, whether that's age, lived experience, language, culture, whatever. But as we center that, it's going to make our listening across the board better. So it's just another connection that right now we're centering that type of communication, knowing that if we aren't centering that, then we're probably not going to get better as listeners.
That's absolutely right. And if everyone's saying that we're global, but yet we're communicating only in one way. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. One more comment. So listening to others requires to listen to your internal self. Like, what the heck does that mean? How do we get there? You have to build up your self-awareness. Now, this is not the soft center that we talked about yesterday. There's a tactic behind that. So have you ever been in a conversation? Lies. Have you ever been in a conflict where you're just like, oh my gosh. And all the skills I'm going to teach are going to go out the window, right? You go back into like, maybe you're defensive, maybe you're silent, but certainly you're not tapped into your center. I know I've been there, and I teach cross-cultural communication. So one reason to do this, to have that strong self-awareness, is you're able to separate yourself from the intense emotions happening in the situation. Don't worry, I will bring in a real life example to share with you why this is critical, especially as a leader. Next slide, please. All right. So the next piece is empowerment. So separation means, okay, this person's having a moment. It's not about me, but there's something happening here. So now you're able to think. You're able to continue your communication. The empowerment piece is you can reflect on what had just happened, or you can respond in the moment. People that can respond in the moment in a heated debate, safe circles, crisis response, those are the people that have a strong sense of self-awareness, and they're able to respond in crisis. That is why there's a 4.5-year program on this work. It takes so much practice. Y'all, it didn't take me 4.5 years. I don't know when it happened where I was able to handle an intense conversation in the room and everyone's like, Catherine, you look so calm. Like, oh, I'm focused. Later on, I vented in my journal. I went for a walk. But in the moment, this is what it's going to train you to do. How do you respond in the moment? Next slide. And don't worry, I'll bring you all in. My style doesn't change much. I'm going to bring you all in. All right, so here's separation. And here's a story. This story is a real story. Names have been changed to protect folks. And someone asked me, how do I pick the names? Well, the names are inspired by students I used to serve at UC Berkeley. The people that really inspired me to do this work. So if you're listening out there and you're like, is that my name? Yeah, it's you. I miss y'all. So Hida is a new employee and she's attending her first offsite with a group of coworkers. Hida's boss asked her to take pictures with the goal of preserving company history and gathering images her lead can use as supplemental material for the event debrief. In short, she wants to show, look, we're having fun. We're bonding. During a workshop, an employee and member of the audience objects to the photo taking. Stop taking my photo. That's actually how it went. Their tone was angry. They stood up. They got bigger. They are direct with Hida, and the rest of the audience body language communicate high discomfort. So these were ERGs. These are ERG leaders. Hida's time at the company was very short-lived at that point. The discomfort in the room, you can feel it. You can really feel it. Next slide. Because Hida is self-aware, this is definitely not about me, but it's something here. I can feel it. And is able to separate herself from the employee's response. She remains calm, and this is Hida's response. Hida acknowledges the employee calmly, apologizes, and takes the opportunity to ask the group if anyone else feels uncomfortable with their photos being taken, to tell her directly or email her in private. Because of in the moment, the intense situation quickly diffused because Hida was able to separate herself from the intense emotions this person was displaying. As a result, the employee feels heard, and this is their response. The employee who's angry calms down and continues to be an active participant in the workshop. So this one separate thing, being able to separate, you're able to not even hold the space for yourself, but you're able to hold the space for a group of people. Next slide.
Yeah, I'm seeing this thinking in my mind going a lot of other ways, being defensive, realizing like, oh, well, my boss told me to, this is on me. Are you trying to get me fired? Like, I can just think that there's so many different ways
There's a lot of scenarios. Yeah, actually, during this incident, there was unpacking of a lot of things. People were really, they're looking to Hida to figure out like, okay, how do I do this? And how do I do it fast? Mm-hmm. All right, audience. I want to know from you. So this is a thing. I don't remember if it was lesson 1 or 2, but this work is like developing your muscles. Everyone has some muscle. right? Most of us have some muscle. Here, we're just trying to flex the muscles you already have. So you know what it is, how you know how it feels to be heard. Can someone please join me in my, if you can't see the screen, I have a hopefully looking cozy chair, hopefully from more body types. If I was in my living room, you'd be in my living room and we'd be teaching this and be very cozy. Can someone join us and help me? And I want to hear, I want to know, when's the last time you felt heard?
Yeah, so jump in on the chat if you're joining with us live. Feel free to talk out loud to yourself if you're joining us later. Catherine, I've got one for you if you're ready.
Sure, just give me one moment. Let me see if there's anyone out there.
Yeah.
I hang out with you all day, Nikki.
I know, I'm lucky.
If you're listening right now and you're just thinking like, when's the last time I felt heard? You can refer us. You can support your circle. Yes, Nikki. Okay, when's the last time you felt heard? And you have to be honest. Like, what did you feel? What was the conversation like? What were they doing? You don't have to be specific. Just paint us a picture.
Yeah, it was last night. I was sitting out on my porch and had a friend over. She's a newer friend to me and kind of in the getting to know you phase. And she just kept asking questions that were like really thoughtful. And then I often will turn a question around saying, oh, okay, enough about me. How about you? And she was like genuinely surprised. Like, oh, she wasn't asking that question to me because she wanted me to ask it back. And she wanted to answer it. She was genuinely just interested in my answers and had so many follow-up questions that you could tell weren't just like stashed in her mind. They genuinely were follow-ups because she was curious to continue learning more.
How do you know she was genuine? This is good.
It didn't feel staged. Mm-hmm. And they were questions that wouldn't have made sense had she not actually listened to what I was sharing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so she was asking questions that were timely. She knew something about you already.
Mm-hmm. And they were questions that had to do with like that specific answer that I was making. And there was also a lot of just like holding the space of, wow, or without immediately interjecting her own experiences, which is something I do all too often.
So she was, it sounds like, I mean, you were mimicking her, it sounds like you were nodding a bit and like humming. So in this moment, thank you, Nikki. In this moment, I am actively listening to Nikki. Cross-cultural communication is very subtle. So something I do is I nod my head. Now, I have to replay it. I'm not sure if I did it first from Nikki. But what happens is you start to mirror the person you're listening to. This is a tactic. Nikki is my lead, so I'm going to let you know. This is not a bamboozle. This is just a lesson in real time, right? You're telling me a story of when you felt heard. I listened to your story and I'm reflecting back. Now look at Nikki nodding again. So this is communication at its core. The friend that you are describing, what a beautiful person to continue to ask you intentional questions and just be there for you. How did that make you feel knowing like this person is just here for me? I mean, you're my boss, so I can imagine how it may feel for someone I'm just interested in you.
Yeah, it felt great. Like we were building really strong trust and just, I said there was a little bit of awkwardness at the very beginning and that really melted away quickly. And it just became really natural. The guards that I think many of us put up in a new relationship with someone melted pretty instantly.
That's interesting. We're going to talk about that guard in a moment. Thank you, Nikki, for joining my cozy chair. This was inspired by, what's that? My mom. So everything's inspired by my kid, all the fun stuff. So like, I think my big blue couch or something, like the blue dog. Anyway, somebody will correct me later.
Blue's Clues?
Next slide. Yes, Blue's Clues. Yes, I love the soft center. And, we have to get here with certain steps. So when I am actively listening and I'm fully engaged in my listening skills, I actually have steps that run through my mind. Now, because I've listened for so long, I don't think of the steps. But what happens is if someone were to ask me, what do you just do there? I'm able to rewind and tell you what I've done. I'm not expecting that from my audience. What I am affecting is, can you be that to Nikki one day? Can you get through the awkwardness and build that rapport and relationship? Can you be welcome to ask questions? How do you know if you're welcomed? We'll get there. Next slide, please. All right, so the beautiful thing about listening. Anybody a Forrest Gump fan? I love Forrest Gump. You never know what you're going to get. You just don't. Nikki is not shy. I don't know if you noticed that by our third time together. She's not very shy on camera. I've not gotten that. Now, maybe she is, but I certainly have not seen that, Nikki. So you never know what you're going to get from that person, and you never know what you're going to get from that person that day, right? So that's when you have to be really strategic of how you use your listening skills. On the right, here are some steps. Now, you see this cross out. That's intentional. We're not going to learn about talking today. Yes, we're talking about communication, but the talking part will require more work. So with the talking part, we have a reflection activity. We can reverse role play. We're going to have an observer check how you're talking and speaking and receiving information. You'll get real-time feedback. That talking piece is the whole hour by itself, because a talking piece, that's really intentional. There's a lot less talking when you're listening really well. The steps we are going to cover are 3: attending behavior, asking questions, and observations. Next slide, please. Asking, well, that's a mistake. I don't think I need that slide. Move on, please.
All right.
All right. In addition to the steps that I mentioned, there's the 3 V's plus B. Now, this is not my information. This is from one of my oldie but goodie books. It's blocked on my screen. I hope you can see it. And if you can't, I can give you the information afterwards. It is a counseling book. It's on my shelf back here somewhere. So I went through that dense, 400-page book, and I consolidated this for you. The 3 V's plus B. Visual eye contact. Now, if you're in the audience, you're like, Catherine, I don't have visual eye contact ability. This is a lesson that I'm aware that this was made for people that have a visual ability. So the lessons I teach, you're going to have to adapt it to what you can do. And if you need support in that area, I'm open to support you in that. Vocal qualities. Verbal tracking. Ooh, that one. Verbal tracking is one of the hardest things people have to do, to practice. Have you ever had a talker and you're just like, when do I get in that? Wait a minute. We're talking about, what are we talking about now? I thought we were talking about the budget. Oh, no, we're talking about the cat. Okay. This is all internal. Oh my gosh, we have 5 minutes left. How did we get here? Has anyone had that meeting with someone?
We find this on interviews often. And so much I want to know about someone, and whether it's nerves or whatever, we go on a few tangents.
Yes. And then I am that person sometimes. So if you don't know how to verbally track, and I'm stressed or I'm super excited or I'm off, it's Sunday, I'm going to just talk, I might overwhelm you. So my listener really needs to know some verbal tracking. What is that? That's the one we won't be able to cover today. Body language. Okay, body language is critical. So I could not leave that out. Very critical. This next slide, please. Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any questions or comments before I continue? I'll tell you, the funnest thing about doing this today is I have never done it where I can't see your face. Not once have I done this workshop without seeing my folks' face. Even on a screen when I had 250 people, I can at least see little tiny movements on the screen. So thank you for being with me, even though I can't see you.
Yeah, the Zoom communication step into a whole new level. And it's one that I think all of us have needed to upskill on and are still probably needing that skilling. I know myself.
Absolutely. And I think that's why this workshop became very popular. And sometimes people will say to me like, well, I can't, well, let me stay on track here. I almost got off track. There's a reason this is taught a certain way. This is going to help also with virtual meetings, with virtual audiences. I'll help you get there. So experts say that up to 70% of communication is nonverbal. 70% is nonverbal. Next slide, please. Okay, this is my friend. If you can't see the screen, the person appears to be nodding, slightly interested in what I'm saying. I'm really glad it worked. It's a small video. So this is a person, maybe we're in person. We're at a cafe together. I love a good cafecito. Based on what you're seeing, Nikki, how do you think this person is without even saying anything, just based on their nonverbals?
Yeah, it seems like they're following, kind of interested, trying to make some motions to say like, continue on, like, yeah, I'm with you.
Awesome. Next slide, please. I call this my COVID-19 slide. This is actually what we see. Nikki, can you please describe to the audience what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, I'm seeing someone kind of within a computer screen frame, and I'm seeing the nodding. I'm seeing some nodding, kind of looking, but I'm missing the arm wave, and I'm not quite the like, I'm with you, is what I'm missing from this one.
Yes. So with COVID and our camera, you can't see me. Like when I speak to my audience and I'm welcoming you to the space, I look like an emoji that goes like this in real life because I have morphed my body to help you feel welcome to meet my nonverbals in the tiny screen. That's something I had to practice. What I'm seeing here with my friend, I don't know if they're tapping their fingers or picking their nails. I don't know if they're like, are they drinking? I don't know. Their cup says a quad espresso, which means 4 shots in a drink. I mean, there's so many things I'm missing.
Or getting important emails, or managing childcare needs, or there's so much else that goes on behind the scenes.
Yes, we can't. Oh, thank you. I almost forgot. There's a reason there's a background in their background. There's a virtual background, everyone. Now I really don't know what the heck is going on. How am I able to listen to this person's nonverbals? I always want us to shift to solutions and what we can do because they are giving us something. They're nodding their head. They are trying to be present with me. Now, if you're thinking like, Catherine, I can't have my screen on all the time. I'm tired, or I have a friend that says I have ADHD and it just messes with me. Everyone has different needs. Now, what I'm saying is when you can have the camera on, just letting you know that's the best way to be heard is when people can see your nonverbals. It is more work. I want to honor that. It is more work to show yourself. Really, sometimes for me, expose myself. And when I need to be really heard and understood, sometimes Nikki seeing me, however I am in that moment, is critical if I feel safe for her to see me that way. Let's get to there. How can I help? How can you get someone to feel safe? All right. So here's an activity, Nikki. So we're going to come in. What happens if someone starts asking questions before obtaining trust or just not paying attention? There's a person on my screen, again, from Canva. I love that they have different images now. Very intentional. This person is looking away from the talker. What are some things that this person might be thinking, but not expressing? You're just coming with questions.
I see them thinking, what's next? When am I eating lunch? Who else is here? Who opened the door? Now I'm cold.
What about like, I just start asking you questions. Hey, who are you?
I'd feel jarred.
Are you new here? Oh, here, I'm gonna get a little harder because I can feel like this is a advanced crowd. Hey, happy Black History Month. And you just met this person who my character is a Black man or Black person. What do you think? Step into courage with me. What are some possible things this person's thinking?
Who the hell are you to all of a sudden start talking to me? How do I even know who you are? Also, now you're reducing my everything about me, to my phenotype, to race. Also, like, I'm just trying to plan out my day.
There we go. Okay. I got Nikki warmed up. That's the truth. We have plenty to say, and we're taking out some cursing probably because, we're recording this for you. People are saying things in their mind. And when I hear about like quiet quitting, I'm like, oh, I know about that quiet space, that hush community. It's internal. So let's go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So if the person is brave, ready, or lucky they trust you enough, they'll start to talk. Now, how does that happen? Asking open-ended questions. Hey, how are you? Haven't met you yet. Asking closed questions. Do you want the camera on or off today? I'm kind of tired. Asking questions to understand. Hey, I don't really know what to say, but I noticed there was like this crisis that happened, and I just let you know it's on my mind. If is anything on your mind, I just want to know. I don't want to put my stuff on you. You're gathering information to understand. I also use a big V word. I believe that was our first lesson. Vulnerability. I shared that I'm in discomfort because something happened outside our work. When you share something in vulnerability, sometimes people will lean in and share, and sometimes they won't, and that's okay. But to continue to lean into vulnerability, you're creating that space for someone else. And remember, when you're getting to know someone, it's not about you. If you want them to get to know you, that's okay. But in the moment when you just met someone, really understand who they are. Next slide.
Slipping on my game here. Okay, we're moving.
Nikki was touched upon this a little bit in the beginning. Now, this is not perfect. There's cultural differences. So part of learning how to cross-culturally communicate is that you need to know about cultures beyond yours. You need to know about subcultures within your culture. The more you explore about different people, the more you start to understand what different nonverbals mean, what head nod means in different cultures, what you're communicating by your clothes. If my abuela knew I was wearing a jean jacket for you all today at work, she would not approve. It would need to be a button-up white shirt. Like I work at I don't want to say, but I wouldn't look like this. Oh, and my goodness, bright lipstick. So, and my upbringing, communicating in maybe Panama and near my abuela would not approve. So for you to understand how to communicate, you need to get to know different cultures and how they communicate. You need to adjust your style. So your personal meaning of a behavior and action may be different than what someone is trying to communicate directly or unknowingly. So for example, I learned this from my colleague, Erica. Hi, Erica. She went to a religious setting, and I believe she put her hands like this. No, was it like this? I think it was like this, right, Nikki?
I think so.
And she got critiqued for it. And it was such a beautiful story because for me, I'm like, oh, I do this all the time when I'm just like trying to get comfortable. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was like not a good thing in that setting. And so when you're able to bring in your colleagues or your coworkers to share experiences about their background, you have no idea how much learning you're going to get from that. What else am I doing with my hands that could be offending people? Next slide, please. I invite everybody to take a breath. All right, Catherine, got it. Meet someone, nod my head, ask questions. Ready to go. And if that's you right now, I thank you for your excitement. I love that you're excited. And what if you rush this process? What could happen? Okay, let's say, okay, I'm going to give you all credit. You're ready. You're ready to listen. Next slide, please. So I had to think of a persona that might be perhaps challenging to listen to. On this screen is my son. I believe he was 5 years old at the time. His persona, his self-awareness Not so much. He is a huge talker. No pauses whatsoever. Oh, and if you have something to say, he'll respond with yeah, but. Yeah, but all day. He's super empathetic. Really, really empathetic. So if you try to get to know him, he's going to just go right back to you. He's a strong BLM advocate. Really strong. He's exploring his identity. He's not even sure, like, she, her, I'm a kid. He's an Aquarius. Now, that's a fun one. You can look it up if you want. But my Aquarius doesn't like following rules. So now imagine this one persona. Multiply them by 20. Too big. Okay. Staff meeting. Maybe 5? 5 of, and you only know one of these personas. Now, what if you get someone that doesn't talk at all? Oh, what if you get someone that interrupts? What if you get someone that never comes on camera? You never hear from them. You're dealing with listening to these different personas. And what could happen is, because you're not equipped yet, you're listening to one person in one way, and you're thinking that one way is going to work for everybody. Nikki, you're nodding your head. Have you felt this pitfall before?
Oh, definitely. So many meetings when we have the team there, and many of us, even if we're on camera, can mask how we're feeling, trying to, we kind of have our Zoom face on, which is why I think many of us enjoy not having our camera on, because we get to rest that and not have to hide or meter what our emotions, how they come across our face. And yeah, I've been wrong many times as to where folks are at.
Yeah. And so, I want to address something because we didn't have time to unpack it fully, but I do want to mention it because it's in our time right now. Like, how do you navigate when people aren't showing who they are, their camera, they're not talking? Well, one, you want to celebrate your wins. They showed up to the meeting. They showed up. To me, that's engagement.
In a hard world with little connection, folks.
Yeah, that's pretty big. Now, I'm going to call in what people don't want to talk about. Well, it might just be their computers on and they're not actually there. That has happened to me. I could prove it. I knew that they weren't out there. Now, but we have to focus on the people that you need to listen to, which are the people there in the moment. One way to figure out, okay, how can I communicate with my team if I can't see them right now? I mean, that's happened to an all hands for us. Like, we're all off and I'm like, Nikki, I'm tired. You're gonna be by yourself today. I'm not showing my camera, right? One tactic is communicating vulnerability to your team. Hey, this is a really intense topic. And I can't see any of you and I can't hear any of you. And it would be really great if you can just at least tell me in the chat if you're okay. Like, if you're still with me, if I need to slow down, because if I don't hear what your needs are, I'm afraid I'm going to keep going and I'm going to miss an opportunity. That's also communication. What's expressing your needs.
Yeah, and something I've learned a lot for you in navigating these remote meetings is giving lots of avenues for communication and feedback. And some of that is in having an agenda up front, asking for people, saying, hey, it's really important that I can see at least one person today, or kind of depending on what your needs as a speaker, my needs as a speaker have been, being able to let folks know how it's important for me that they show up, because it might be really a sensitive topic that I actually need to be at my best listening to be able to read the room. And whether that's a quick Google form, a quick emoji check-in, a GIF check-in, folks kind of flashing on camera and off camera, like whatever that looks like, just the more options that I give folks to engage, that the better and smoother I've had a good read on what the room feels like.
Let's talk about that real quick. Go to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
So the tools help, but let's say you hurt my son's feelings. In the image, the person is crying. Now, this is not accurate. I'm being really nice by showing exactly what this person is feeling. But the accuracy is people could be smiling. They could be very still. People show emotions in very different ways. It's not always so clear. The results can happen is avoidance, silent quitting, cameras off forever, a lawsuit, or you become a post. If you don't know what that means, please call us or email us. You become a post and it's not a good thing. So what do you do? When Nikki's talking about the resources like an agenda, the form. Those are really good tools. And I see a lot of companies doing that. That's not where we struggle. We struggle in that one-on-one conversation. Now you're saying like, well, I mess up once. It's okay. Colleagues talk to each other. Right. Now, if you mess up before, it's not over forever. You can still work on yourself and rebuild that relationship. However, if you become known as a person that does not listen, they just do not get me. I just said my relative, something happened with my relative, and then you ask how I'm doing. Okay. So when people start to talk to one another, that form is not going to get filled out. That agenda will not get read. And so when I talk about cross communication, it's the nuances and difficulty that happens in one-on-one interactions. That's where you really got to start inside. Then you talk to one person, then you work in a group. And you keep practicing that. Next slide.
Yeah. And then to share just one thing I've learned from doing that in the one-to-one that you've taught me, Catherine, is if someone shares with you, huge opportunity, don't waste it, because they're probably not going to come around if you don't show that you've acted on that listening and that you didn't do true listening.
Next slide. So the closing came up closer today. And it's really, I wanted to show that this one was a hard one for me to show quickly. Because if we tapped into the other pieces, what happens is people would tend to want more and more and more. And I love that. But there's some things I think I said at the beginning with Nikki, there's some things we can move fast. We can do it really. Listening, this is one of those things where you've got to practice and it needs to be intentional and it's going to look slow at the beginning. So I want to remind us, we got to first reflect. We got to listen to ourselves, our intuition. What do I need to work on? The next step is listening to one person. Now, if you're in my audience, maybe you already know about reflection. Maybe you're a former counselor. Maybe you're a coach yourself. Okay, now listen to one person. And what I mean listen is take a week. This is a homework assignment if you're ready for it. If you're ready for it, for 1 week, don't talk when you start engaging with your family members and your friends. Just listen. Some key data points that show that you're successful. People will say things like, what's wrong with you? You're not talking. You're going to respond, oh, I'm practicing my listening. Oh, okay. And people tend to just open up and keep going, especially if they're friends and family. Other key things are, wow, that was a really good conversation. And you said nothing. They were talking the whole time. Other feedback is they stopped talking to you. It's probably because you weren't being a good listener. So if you feel like, okay, Catherine, I already know my internal work. I know myself. I can practice some of these skills. Try it for a week with your close family. Please don't go to strangers and create harm. Go to your family and friends and try it. All right. If you're there, then you can go to the next step and listen to a group or a crowd. Next slide. And if we were to do this with you, there's more, how do I explain it? There's more heart work in this part of our cohort than the other parts. This part is something I have coached other CEOs on for years. Because what happens is we get really good at communicating, but we all have bad days. I know I have had a bad day at Hustle Hunters and I completely missed the mark. Me and Nikki communicate really well. And there's days where I email her what I said, excuse me. And she's like, that's not what I said. I'm like, oh, it's probably because I wasn't listening good enough because I'm tired, because I'm a human being. So it's not a perfect system, but what I want to do is bring it together and actually practice it so you can start developing that muscle.
Good.
Yes. I'm sorry. Next slide. So congratulations. We have went through 3 parts of our learning. We first started with vulnerability, definitions and naming. And today we touched upon cross-cultural communication.
As Catherine mentioned,
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And there's lots of ways to get back in touch with us. So we shared some of this event interest. So if folks have questions, this is a great time. We've got some extra time today to dig into some questions and answers. And while folks are formulating and typing their questions, just wanted to remind y'all, we love doing this work. reach out to me, Nikki@hustlehunters.com, or just check out the Hustle Hunters website. We're a recruiting firm, we're a coaching firm, and we're a consulting firm. Anything people we want to work with y'all on, because we spend a lot of our time building trust in historically excluded candidate groups with the desire to bring them into amazing companies, specifically early stage startups. That only works if we're all doing the work, right? We want folks to thrive, both as managers, team leaders, and then as the employees that we bring in. So it's important that we're all thinking about, is this a space for other folks? Are we proactively doing communication work so that anyone who joins us is going to feel part of the fold and also start to build out what that looks like on their end? Oh, and then Catherine, do we have time to unpack, like, what does becoming a post? Can you unpack that one for us? We've got some time here.
All right. Becoming a post means your organization wasn't listening well, right? Or something happened between you and a leader. Becoming a post is, instead of someone being able to communicate that to their boss, their coworker, HR, people vent somewhere else, and then you become a post, maybe a meme. And then everybody else responds to that. And so when I see that, as a business, it's tough. But as a person, I understand, I empathize with that person, because they weren't feeling heard. And when you're posting something about something you experienced at work, what do people do when you post something? They respond to it. They either are feeling you, like they're encouraging you, they're amplifying you, they're lifting you up. They're trying to listen to you through commenting and responding to your post. So you become a post is what I call it. It's like, please don't become a post. Have that difficult conversation while you can. Does that answer your question?
This is a really core lesson I've learned through working with you as a DEIB professional, Catherine, is the more ways, again, the better for getting that feedback. But you kind of breezed over something that's so critical there of making sure someone feels heard. Making sure someone feels heard. I think that can feel really simple, and it has me going back to that example you gave earlier. Is that something you could expand on a little bit? We just talked about listening for 45 minutes. That's just a term that I think is so important. And at least just said, yeah, that's a great answer. And there's good clarification there.
Okay. So making sure we're listening, let's talk about that. I will bring in a Hustle Hunters example. So part of my role at Hustle Hunters is consulting Nikki and checking up on the team's health and making sure that we're practicing what we're teaching our clients. And something that tends to happen, I notice with Nikki and I have permission to share the story, is Nikki will tell me, this is what happened. I'm like, oh, okay, fantastic. How do you know that's for sure that's what happened? The response is, well, that's what they said. I'm like, oh, did you confirm though? What I'm hearing is, you said this is what I'm learning. Is that correct? And she was like, no. I'm like, okay. At the beginning, I said to myself, I'm new at Hustle Hunters. Nikki's a strong communicator. We're fine. That same challenge came back up again because that person was not communicating what Nikki thought. And it created a cascade of challenges. And Nikki owned it. And I owned it as well. Like, okay, we assumed we understood. And we did not use cross-cultural communication. We did not confirm that we were hearing the person accurately. The other thing is, when people are talking and Nikki's listening, I asked, what do they look like? Were they nodding their head? Were they just looking at you? Were they looking down? I remember Nikki saying, I don't know if you remember Nikki. She's like, I don't remember. I'm like, oh, dang it. I missed opportunity. 70% people express themselves through nonverbals. But Nikki was just taking in the words, not looking at their nonverbals. Does that answer your question, Nikki?
Yeah, that's helpful. And some additional clarification as I unpack that for myself was I was presenting. I was really focused on a deck, really focused on the technology behind that in some of these conversations. And I made it really about me when in delivering information, it needed to be about the people in the room, virtual room. So when someone gave me the opportunity and that gift of showing themselves on the video, I needed to make sure that I was maximizing my technology in a way that I could actually like see and engage with folks.
That's interesting when it comes to technology. So I've taught different things on various platforms. And one of the workshops I teach is how to pick the career coach that's best for you. And in that workshop, I remember somebody private messaging me on LinkedIn. I don't know why I had LinkedIn open. I usually close everything, but I had it open, and they were in a bit of a crisis. And because people were opening up, they were opening up in the moment. Now, I needed to listen to that person. Remember, when you're able to listen to one, you can listen to many. And sometimes that means pausing. So in real time, I had announced to my audience that's watching me live, I need a moment because one of our members needs my attention just for a moment. I communicated with them through chat. Now, if you're asking me, if you're wondering, how do you do this through chat and Slack? Very similar. I hear there's reflection questions. You're going to track the same way, but you have to be able to do it verbally, and then it'll translate in written ways. I was able to communicate with this person, maintain that trust, ask questions, and I did it rapid. I mean, people are watching me, right? I have to do it rapid fire, and they were okay for now. I can come back to them. Then I came back to the audience. So when you're leveraging cross-cultural communication and technology, please don't let technology take away the humanity that humans need, which is the listening part. Always come back to that person. Any other questions?
So what I'm hearing from you, this is what I've learned a lot from Catherine, is to reflect and say, so Catherine, what I'm hearing from you is that
I was going to say, oh, you're going to reflect.
Whether there's technology or not involved, we want to make sure that listening is our focus and that we're not letting that get in the way. Does that accurately represent what you're sharing?
That is correct. Reflection. So this is I would love to do this more with you. So Nikki is one of my most eager students. This is why I love working with Nikki. Reflection. I don't want to leave people hanging on what the heck that means, right? So reflection. Reflection is like a mirror. You're bringing back the words that person's bringing to you. Now, when I teach young counselors, I still mentor young counselors. They're like, but aren't you going to sound like a robot? I'm like, only if you're going to let yourself sound like a robot. But trust me, I still have counseling, therapists, coaching friends. I know what they're doing. I can hear it. I'm like, oh, they're on step 5. And it still feels amazing. So reflecting is using the words, language, tone, pace that the person's giving you the information. Nikki started with, what I'm hearing is, I have a question in the chat, and using my words to confirm that if that's what I said. One moment, please. Any tips for how to be more focused when active listening? Oh my gosh. Can you please give that person like an emoji or something? Because it's a really, really good question. Let me know the emoji has been sent. Leave you a heart for vulnerability. Thank you so much. So are you the listener with an attention disorder? As the example? Okay. All right. There's a couple of ways to do this, and I don't know you, but if I were coaching you, I would ask more questions to get to the root of your solution. I'm going to make some assumptions. You're here because you want to be a better listener. You are not scared of vulnerability because you just asked a question that maybe a lot of people are actually thinking about. So I'm going to make those assumptions. There's a couple of ways. So you can express that to the person. Hey, I want to listen to you, but I've had a really tough day. Now, I understand your question, but not everyone's going to say, hey, I have ADHD. They're going to say other things that are normalized. Okay, so I'm going to pretend I had a really tough day and I want to listen to you. But I am. So people have taught me that I have ADHD. They may doodle. They may draw to stay focused. Maybe they have what's the Zoom fatigue. Let's be specific about that. Personally, I can't look at this lens all day long. I'm more comfortable looking at my computer screen. I communicate to other folks how I'm communicating and how I'm listening. Now, you're going to have to figure out, what tools do I need as someone with a disorder, or someone I know the person listening to me has a disorder. You all need to communicate, figure out like, okay, what tools can we use so we have good communication? Another skill that everyone can benefit from are those notes afterwards. This is what I heard from our meeting. Now, some people are like, Catherine, I don't have time for that. I'm meeting back to back to back to back. Like, well, then you're telling me that you don't want to listen. And you're also telling me you have a lot of time to troubleshoot later. And then you're telling me you have time to rehire someone because they didn't feel heard. And you see what I'm getting at? So taking that time to send a quick bullet points. This is what I heard in our conversation. This is accurate.
Anything to add?
Anything to add? I've had people in front of me knit. I don't ask why they're knitting. But because I've gotten to know human beings, I can tell they're taking some extra steps to be a good listener for me. Does that address your question? And would you like more tools, or is that a good starting point?
Catherine, something I can add is around the eyes. I know a lot of folks, it can be overstimulating to have all the screens going, and making that direct eye contact talking about robotic, can feel very robotic. So something I've heard from some folks is, having their hands active or shown, of like, I might not be looking, but my hands are here. You can tell I'm not multitasking. You can tell I'm not doing anything. I'm drinking tea. I've got something that, like, you can tell that I'm in the space, and I'm maybe echoing verbally, even though I'm not directly looking. Some of those are something that I've heard from someone. I've heard from some folks say that has been helpful for them.
And I want to thank you, Nikki, for that. I want to share, there was someone I was working with, and I'm not psychic. I just want to tell people I'm not psychic. I just really listen. I really want to listen to people. And there have been a colleague where they were playing a video game during our meeting. And initially, because I'm a human, I was like, how dare you? Got things to do. Why are you playing video games? Then I thought to myself, they showed up to the meeting. When people show up, at least give them that. I mean, they could have just been, I'm sick and I'm going to play video games, but they were there with me. So I used the other tools of cross-cultural communication, which is asking questions. I kept them engaged. Then I noticed they weren't understanding how the connection of what question was connected to the goal of the meeting. At that point, I think it was fair to assume, like, this person doesn't want to communicate today. I think they're showing up, and I decided, you know what, let's communicate in a time where you're in a better space. Communicating boundaries is also critical. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy we came here. I forgot a really important point. The better listener you become, the more people will tell you their problems. The better listener you become, the more people will come to you with their problems. Now, if you're thinking like, oh, that's fantastic, I love helping. Look, you're going to burn out. We need you. We need more listeners in our workplace. We need better communicators. That's when you're going to have to start creating some boundaries. And I definitely want to create that with you. So I'm glad that was a good starting point. One more. I don't know about all disabilities. And even if I did, everyone's disability or abilities are different in their lives. They show up very different. So in order to learn and flex more in this space, learning more about people and asking them, don't burden them, do your homework, but ask them like, hey, is this working for you? I learned from a friend of mine, they put headphones on. They're not listening to anything. But when they have them on for some reason, they say like, I know I'm working. And it's a signal to me, like, don't bother them. So this is so many nuances of how people focus and how people show up at work. Instead of making assumptions, communicating like, hey, I'm curious why you do that. Maybe I'll try that. Do you see how we can unpack more and more and more and more and more? Any other questions? Thank you for the engagement.
Yeah, and I think, as just to reiterate that point and really bring this home and close us out, Catherine, I really wanted to drive back to these different sections of listening that you shared, of like attending behavior, asking questions, observations, talking. We didn't dig into all of them, but just kind of reminding folks of what some of those steps were that we discussed.
Yes, and then since we're talking about different abilities, I want to talk about eye contact. Again, this book was, written a while ago. There's still some golden nuggets in there, but please don't take one as a checklist. To me, it's like 3 V's plus B means these are options. Use your options where it's best fitting. Body language, that's a critical one of the person that doesn't have the same body as me. I worked with a client who had one arm, and their expression could be completely looking different with literally one arm. So if I just use body language, that wasn't going to serve my client. So you got to use your your toolkit to figure out, okay, what am I taking in from this person? What am I giving them in my communication? These all are connected.
Yeah, and as you've noticed today, both Catherine and I feel pretty comfortable making eye contact with each other, especially even over screens. That I would recommend looking out at towards authors, towards people writing pieces, doing webinars that have more lived experience with that. Because I know there's plenty of folks who have kind of built out the combinations they need and found tools that help them thrive.
Oh, there's so much more. I mean, I feel like this every time we had a session, like, there's so much more.
Yeah.
Before we end, Nikki, I don't know if it's my intuition or what, but I wanted to ask the audience, is there anyone out there with like a lingering question? I call it the doorknob comment, where you're like, I want to ask, but I don't have time. I don't embarrass myself. I'll ask later. And then you ask like 1 minute left. Are you out there? I welcome you. And that's another form of communication. Silence. So intentional silence is another way of communication.
Awesome. Well, I hope you all join us. We want to continue this learning journey together, as unfortunately it's never going to be done and there's so much more to learn, but learning can be really fun. And yeah, just thank you all for your time, your attention, your focus, for joining us on this journey. We talked yesterday about how doing any diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work is part of social change. So thank you for joining on this journey and making our world, like genuinely making the spaces that we walk in, work in, live in better. So thank y'all. Bye.